The eternal dawn hung in space like a dying giant. Once it had been the most beautiful ship in the galaxy. Now it looked broken and twisted. Pieces of metal floated around it like scattered bones. The ship's lights flickered on and off, making it look like it was crying. Fleet Admiral Veltara stood on the bridge of her command ship, staring at the wreck through the big window. Her blue skin looked pale in the dim light. She had 4 arms, and all of them were shaking. The eternal dawn was supposed to be impossible to destroy. It was built by 17 different alien races working together for 300 years. It was their pride, their hope, their strongest weapon. Now it was just floating junk. "How bad is it?" she asked her chief engineer, a tall gray alien with too many eyes. "Bad," he said, his voice flat. "The quantum crystal at the ship's heart is broken. Not just broken, shattered in ways that should not be possible. The ship's computer brain is not responding. It might be dead." Veltara closed her large yellow eyes. The Eternal Dawn was not just any ship. It was the flagship of the Galactic Federation. Without it, they were weak. The enemy would know. They would attack. "Can we fix it?" she asked. The engineer's many eyes blinked slowly. "No, Admiral. We cannot. The crystal was grown in the heart of a dying star. That star is now gone. We cannot make a new one. Even if we could, touching the broken pieces might make them explode. The explosion would destroy this entire star system." For 3 days, the best minds in the galaxy tried to save the ship. The Altarians brought their quantum computers that could think faster than light. The Zephyrians sent their master builders who had created floating cities. The Krillian hive mind connected 1,000 brains to solve the problem. They all failed. One by one, each race gave up. The Altarians packed their quantum computers. The Zephyrians rolled up their blueprints. The Krillians disconnected their 1,000-brain network. Each time they said the same thing. Impossible. Cannot be done. The ship is dead. Admiral Veltara sat in the meeting room watching her allies leave. Soon only a few beings remained. Then someone knocked on the door. "Come in," she said, too tired to care who it was. 3 humans walked into the room. They looked small and weak compared to the other aliens. Their skin was pale pink instead of blue or gray or green. They had only 2 arms and 2 eyes each. They wore simple work clothes that looked old and patched. The first human was a man named Jinha Park. He was short and had black hair. His hands were covered in small scars from years of working with machines. The second was a woman named Harin Lee. She had long black hair tied back and carried a computer tablet. The third was Quan Sato, a big man with strong arms and oil stains on his shirt. "Admiral," Jinha said with a small bow, "we would like to look at the ship." The few remaining aliens in the room started laughing. Not mean laughing, sad laughing. The kind you do when something is so hopeless that you might as well joke about it. "Humans," said the Altarian ambassador. "You have been in space for what? 50 of your years? We have been building ships for 50,000 years. If we cannot fix it, how can you?" Jinha did not get angry. He just looked at the ambassador with calm eyes. "Maybe that is the problem," he said. "You know too much about how ships should work. We only know how to make broken things work again." Admiral Veltara studied the humans. She had heard stories about them. They were new to space, yes. Their technology was basic compared to other races. But they had survived on a dangerous planet by being clever and stubborn. Very stubborn. "What makes you think you can succeed where others have failed?" she asked. Harin stepped forward. "Because we do not see a broken ship," she said. "We see a puzzle with missing pieces. The quantum crystal cannot be replaced," the Altarian said. "This is fact. It was grown in conditions that no longer exist." "So we will not replace it," Quan said, his deep voice filling the room. "We will work with what is there." The aliens looked confused. The Zephyrian builder leaned forward. "You cannot repair something that is broken in impossible ways." Jinha smiled for the first time. "We have been doing impossible things our whole lives. On Earth, we learned to fly by falling down many times first. We learned to cure diseases by getting sick. We learned to build computers by breaking lots of them. This is different, the Altarian insisted. This is not your simple human technology. This is quantum crystal matrix with 17 different alien sciences mixed together. One wrong move and it explodes, Jinha finished. Yes, we heard you say that many times. Admiral Veltara found herself leaning forward. There was something in the human's voice, not fear, not arrogance, just quiet confidence, like someone who had fixed many broken things before. You understand the risk? She asked. We understand, Harin said. But Admiral, may I ask you something? When your people first learned to use quantum crystals, did everything work perfectly the first time? Veltara thought about the old stories, the explosions, the failures, the centuries of learning. No, she admitted. Many died learning. Then you understand, Quan said. Learning means breaking things. We are good at learning. The room fell silent. Outside the windows, the eternal dawn continued its slow, broken dance in space. Its light still flickered like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Admiral Veltara made her decision. You have 72 hours, she said. After that, we will have to destroy the ship before it becomes dangerous. The other aliens gasped. 72 hours was nothing. The great races had worked for 3 days each and learned nothing. Jinha nodded. 72 hours is enough. How can you be sure? The Altarian demanded. Jinha looked out at the broken ship. Its twisted metal caught the light of distant stars. Because, he said quietly, we have fixed worse with less time and worse tools. This ship does not want to die. We can see it fighting to stay alive. We just need to help it remember how. As the humans left the meeting room to begin their work, Admiral Veltara heard Jinha say something to his teammates. It was in their human language, but her translator picked it up. Time to get our hands dirty. She watched them walk toward the shuttle that would take them to the dying ship. 3 small humans against the combined failure of the galaxy's greatest minds. It should have been hopeless. But for the first time in days, Admiral Veltara felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. The shuttle ride to the eternal dawn was quiet. Jinha, Harin, and Quan floated in their seats, looking out at the broken ship through the small windows. Up close, it looked even worse. Huge holes were torn in its side. Metal twisted in directions. That hurt to look at. Sparks jumped between broken wires like angry fireflies. It looks like someone took a giant can opener to it, Quan said, shaking his head. Not someone, Harin said, reading from her tablet. Something. The weapon that did this, it knew exactly where to hit. Look at the damage pattern, it is too perfect, too clean. Jinha nodded. Like a surgeon cutting out a heart. Whoever made that weapon studied this ship for a long time before attacking. They docked with the ship through an emergency port. The airlock hissed as it opened. Inside, the eternal dawn was dark and cold. Their flashlights cut through the blackness, showing broken panels and floating debris. Environmental systems are working, Harin said, checking her readings. Barely. We have air and artificial gravity, but not for long. They made their way to the ship's heart, the quantum crystal chamber. Other repair teams had been here before. Them. The humans could see their work. Neat diagnostic equipment, careful measurements, everything done by the book, everything that had failed. Look at this, Jinha said, pointing to a set of readings left by the Altarian team. They tried to scan the crystal with quantum resonance detectors. That makes sense, Quan said. Standard procedure. Yes, but look what happened. Jinha showed them another reading. Each time they scanned it, the damage got worse. The crystal was reacting to their tools. Harin frowned, like it was afraid of being touched. They entered the crystal chamber and stopped. Even Jinha, who had seen many broken machines, felt his breath catch. The quantum crystal was beautiful and terrible at the same time. It hung in the center of the room like a frozen rainbow, but instead of being smooth and perfect, it was cracked into a million pieces. Each crack glowed with a different color. Some colors hurt to look at. The other teams tried to map all the cracks, Harin said, looking at the equipment left behind. They wanted to understand the damage pattern. But that is backwards, Quan said. He walked around the crystal, not using any instruments, just looking with his eyes. They were trying to understand what was broken. We should try to understand what is still working. Jinha smiled. Quan was right. While other races tried to fix the damage, humans always looked for what was still good. What do you see? He asked. Look at the cracks, Quan said. They are not random. They follow a pattern, like water flowing around rocks. The weapon did not just break the crystal. It changed how energy flows through it. Harin was studying her tablet. The ship's computer brain is in the next room. The other team said it was dead, but... She paused. But I'm getting very weak signals, like someone whispering very quietly. They went to the computer core. It was a sphere of light that should have been bright blue. Instead, it flickered between colors like a candle in the wind. The alien repair teams had left it alone after their scans showed no brain activity. Harin connected her tablet to the core with a simple cable. The other teams had used complex quantum interfaces. Harin used a basic data cable that cost almost nothing. Computer? She said softly. Can you hear me? Nothing. Computer, my name is Harin. I am here to help. Still nothing. The men watched as Harin tried different approaches. She did not use commands like the other teams. She talked to the computer like it was a scared animal. You are hurt, she said. I know. Something bad happened to you. But you are not dead. I can hear you trying to talk. A tiny light flickered in the core. There, Jinha said. It responded. Shh, Harin said. Computer, you do not have to be afraid. We are not here to scan you or probe you. We just want to listen. More lights began to flicker. Weak, but getting stronger. That is it, Harin said, her voice gentle. Take your time. No one is rushing you. While Harin worked with the computer, Jinha and Quan explored more of the ship. They found something strange. In some areas, the damage was healing itself. Slowly, but it was happening. Look at this, Quan said, pointing to a wall panel. The other teams marked this as completely destroyed. But see these new connections? The ship is trying to reroute power around the damage. Jinha knelt down and touched the panel. It was warm. The ship is alive, he said quietly. Not just the computer, the whole ship. It is trying to fix itself. They spent hours exploring, not using fancy instruments, just looking and touching and listening. They found that the ship was full of small repairs that had started but not finished, like a body trying to heal from a terrible wound. Back in the computer core, Harin had made progress. The computer was responding to her voice now, not with words, but with light patterns that showed emotions. It is not just damaged, she told the men when they returned. It is traumatized. The weapon did not just break its systems, it hurt its mind. The computer experienced something like torture. Can it be healed? Jinha asked. Maybe, Harin said, but not the way the other teams tried. They treated it like a broken machine. But it is more than a machine. It thinks. It feels. It remembers being hurt. Jinha called back to Admiral Veltara's command ship. Admiral, we need more time and more people, but we also need Rex and Jake. Who? Came the Admiral's voice through the radio. Rex Thompson and Jake Morrison. They are human salvage workers. They know how to work with broken ships. Salvage workers? The Admiral sounded confused. You want garbage collectors to fix our greatest ship? Not fix, Jinha corrected. Help it heal itself. 2 hours later, Rex and Jake arrived. Rex was an older man with gray hair and hands that had fixed 1,000 broken things. Jake was younger but had grown up around machines. They took one look at the Eternal Dawn and nodded. She's hurt bad, Rex said, but she's fighting. That's good. Jake was already pulling tools from his bag. Not fancy tools, simple ones, wrenches, and wire cutters and tape. What's the plan? Jinha looked at his team. 5 humans against the impossible. We stopped trying to fix her, he said. Instead, we help her fix herself. How? Rex asked. The damage is not random, Jinha explained. The weapon left something behind, like a virus in the ship's systems. Every time someone tries to repair the damage, the virus makes it worse. That is why all the other teams failed. So we remove the virus? Jake asked. No, Harin said, understanding. We change the environment, make the ship uninhabitable for the virus, but comfortable for healing. Quan grinned. Like raising a fever. To kill an infection. Exactly, Jinha said. But instead of fighting the damage, we work with it. Let the ship evolve around the virus until the virus becomes harmless. Rex and Jake looked at each other, then started laughing. You want to break it more to fix it? Rex said. I like it. It is crazy, Jake added, which means it might actually work. As the 5 humans began their work, none of them noticed the small changes happening around them. The ship's lights were getting a little brighter. The air was getting a little warmer. Deep in the quantum crystal, new patterns of energy were starting to form. The eternal dawn was listening to the humans. And for the first time since its injury, it was beginning to hope. Admiral Veltara stared at the human proposal on her screen. She read it 3 times, hoping she had misunderstood something. She had not. You want to do what? She asked Jinha over the radio. We want to cause a controlled failure cascade throughout the ship's systems, Jinha repeated calmly. Think of it like resetting a broken bone. Sometimes you have to break it again to make it heal properly. In the command ship's meeting room, every alien advisor was shaking their heads. The Altarian engineers' many eyes were wide with horror. The Zephyrian builder had turned pale green. That will destroy what is left of the ship, the Altarian said. You are talking about deliberately breaking every system at once. Not breaking, Harin's voice came through the radio. Letting them break down naturally, then rebuild themselves the right way. Impossible, said the Zephyrian. Ships do not rebuild themselves. This one does, Quan's voice added. We have been watching it for 12 hours. The ship is already trying to heal. We just need to give it a chance to do it properly. Admiral Veltara looked out at the eternal dawn. In the past day, she had noticed small changes. Some of the floating debris had moved closer to the ship. A few more lights were flickering on and off. It did look like the ship was trying to gather itself together. What are the risks? She asked. Rex's gravelly voice answered. Best case, the ship heals itself and becomes better than before. Worst case, it explodes and takes out this solar system. And you think this is acceptable? Admiral, Jinha said quietly, the ship is going to die anyway if we do nothing. The alien virus is eating it slowly from the inside. In 2 days, maybe 3, the quantum crystal will collapse completely. When that happens, the explosion will be just as big. Jake's voice joined the conversation. At least this way, the ship has a fighting chance. Veltara closed her eyes. The humans were asking her to bet the lives of everyone in the fleet on their crazy plan. But they were right about one thing. Doing nothing meant certain death. Show me your calculations, she said. For the next hour, Harin transmitted data to the command ship. The human mathematics were strange. Instead of trying to predict exactly what would happen, they had calculated probabilities for thousands of different outcomes. They had plans for every possible failure. You have thought of everything, the Altarian admitted grudgingly. Even scenarios we did not consider. That is because we expect things to go wrong, Jinha said. When you plan for failure, success becomes possible. Admiral Veltara made her decision. You have permission to proceed, but at the first sign that the cascade is out of control, we will destroy the ship. Understood, Jinha said. We will keep you informed. On the eternal dawn, the 5 humans prepared for the most dangerous repair job in galactic history. They had spent the last 12 hours mapping every system on the ship, not just the broken ones, all of them. The key is timing, Jinha explained to his team. We cannot just break everything at once. We have to break systems in the right order so the ship can rebuild itself step by step. Harin was connected to the ship's computer through her simple cable. Over the hours, she had built a relationship with the artificial mind. It was still scared and hurt, but it trusted her. "Computer," she said softly, "we are going to help. You heal completely, but it will hurt at first. Do you understand?" The lights in the computer core flickered in a pattern that meant yes. "Good. When we start, do not fight the process. Let your systems shut down, then let them come back online naturally. Can you do that?" Another yes pattern. Rex and Jake were at the ship's power distribution center. Their job was to carefully overload specific circuits in exactly the right sequence. Too fast and the ship would explode. Too slow, and the virus would adapt to their attack. Quan was in the engine room, ready to manually control the ship's power flow during the cascade. It was the most dangerous job. If something went wrong, he would be the first to die. "Everyone ready?" Jinha asked from his position at the quantum crystal chamber. "Ready?" came 4 voices. Jinha took a deep breath. "Beginning cascade in 3, 2, 1. Now." He pressed a button on his simple control panel. Nothing fancy. Just a switch that would start the process that would either save or destroy the greatest ship in the galaxy. The first systems to fail were the non-essential ones. Lights went out section by section. The artificial gravity flickered. Climate control stopped working. The ship began to feel cold and empty. "Cascade is stable," Rex reported, moving to phase 2. More systems shut down. The ship's weapons went offline. Life support reduced to emergency levels. Communication. Systems failed one by one. On the command ship, Admiral Veltura watched her sensors. The eternal dawn was going dark. To everyone watching, it looked like the ship was dying. "Admiral," the Altarian engineer said nervously, "we are losing all readings from the ship. Should we?" "Wait," Veltura said. "We wait." Inside the dying ship, Hyrin watched the computer core dim to almost nothing. The artificial mind was shutting down, trusting her promise that it would wake up healed. "Phase 3, Jake called out. Now they were shutting down critical systems. The ship's structural integrity fields failed. The quantum crystal's containment field flickered and almost went out. "Quan, how are the engines?" Jinha asked. "Engines are..." "Wait." Quan's voice was strange. "Something is happening. The engines are not just shutting down, they are changing. The internal structure is shifting." "That is good," Hyrin said, though she sounded worried. "The ship is starting to adapt." "Phase 4, Rex announced. "This is where it gets really dangerous." They began shutting down the ship's core systems. The quantum crystal's field generators went offline. The main computer's life support failed. The ship's artificial gravity collapsed completely. Everything was floating now. Debris, tools, the humans themselves. But something strange was happening. Instead of drifting apart randomly, everything was moving in patterns, like the ship was organizing itself even without power. "The virus," Hyrin said suddenly. "I can see it in the computer's memory. It is trying to fight the shutdown, but it cannot. It needs active systems to survive." "And the ship?" Jinha asked. "The ship is dreaming. Even with its mind shut down, it is planning how to rebuild itself." For 10 minutes, the eternal dawn floated in space like a dead hulk. No lights, no power, no signs of life. Admiral Veltura gripped her chair so hard, her knuckles turned white. Then, deep in the ship's heart, something wonderful happened. The quantum crystal began to glow. Not with its old light, but with something new. The cracks that had made it ugly were filling with energy. Instead of being wounds, they were becoming part of a new pattern. "It is working," Jinha whispered. "The crystal is healing itself." One by one, systems began coming back online, but they were different now. Better. The ship's computer woke up, and for the first time since its injury, it spoke clearly. "Hello, Hyrin," it said in a voice like music. "Thank you for helping me remember who I am." Power flowed through new pathways that had not existed before. The ship's engines hummed with a sound they had never made. Weapon systems came online, with improved targeting, shields activated with twice their former strength. "Admiral," Jinha called over the radio, his voice full of wonder. "You need to see this." Admiral Veltara looked at her sensors and could not believe what she saw. The Eternal Dawn was not just repaired. It was better than it had ever been. Faster, stronger, more efficient. But most importantly, it was alive in a way that no ship had ever been alive before. "How?" she whispered. Jinha's answer was simple. "We taught it that being broken was not the end. It was just the beginning of becoming something better." 57 hours after the humans began their work, something happened that no one expected. The Eternal Dawn began to sing. Admiral Veltara was drinking her morning tea when her communication officer ran to her with wide eyes. "Admiral, you need to hear this." The officer turned on the ship's speakers. Through the static came a sound unlike anything they had ever heard. It was beautiful and strange, like whale songs mixed with violin music. It came from the Eternal Dawn. "What is that?" Veltara asked. We think the ship is singing, Admiral." On the Flagship, the 5 humans stopped their work to listen. They had been awake for 2 days straight, making small adjustments to help the ship's healing process. They were tired and dirty, but their eyes were bright with excitement. "Do you hear that?" Harin whispered. She was still connected to the ship's computer through her simple cable. "It is not just singing, it is talking to itself. The computer is talking to all the ship's systems." Jinha nodded. Before, the computer and the ship were separate things. The computer gave orders, and the ship followed them. Now they are working together, like a real mind and body. The song continued for an hour, getting more complex as time passed. Other ships in the fleet began picking up the signal. Soon, every being in the star system was listening to the Eternal Dawn's strange music. Quan was in the engine room, watching displays that showed impossible readings. "The engines are running at 130% efficiency," he reported. "That should not be possible. They should explode." "But they are not exploding," Rex said from the weapons bay. "Because the ship knows how to handle the extra power now. Look at these weapon readings. The targeting system is perfect. It could hit a coin at 1,000 kilometers. Jake was checking the ship's structure. The hull is stronger too. The metal has changed somehow. It is like the ship learned how to make itself tougher. But the biggest change was in the ship's computer. Harin had spent hours talking to it, helping it understand what had happened. The artificial mind was no longer just following its programming. It was thinking for itself. "Harin," the computer said in its musical voice. "I remember everything now. The weapon that hurt me, it was not just trying to destroy. It was trying to learn, to study how we work." "What do you mean?" Harin asked. "The virus it left behind was not just meant to stop repairs. It was meant to steal our knowledge. Everything about how Federation ships are built. Our weapons, our shields, our engines. Everything." Jinha looked up from his work. So the enemy was not just attacking. They were gathering intelligence. "Yes," the computer said. "But something went wrong with their plan. When you helped me integrate the virus instead of fighting it, I learned how their technology works too. I can see their ships now. I know their weaknesses." Admiral Veltara's voice came over the radio. "Humans, we need you back on the command ship now." An hour later, the 5 humans sat in the fleet meeting room. They looked out of place among the tall, elegant aliens. Their work clothes were still dirty. Their faces were tired, but their eyes held a quiet pride. "Explain to me what you have done," Admiral Veltara said. Jinha stood up. "We helped the ship become what it was always meant to be," he said simply. "And what is that?" "Alive," Harin said. "Not just a machine that follows orders, a living being that can think and adapt and grow." The alien advisors looked shocked. The Altarian engineer leaned forward. "You created artificial life?" "No," Quan said. "The ship was already alive. We just helped it realize that." Rex pulled out a small device and showed it to the room. This is a piece of the quantum crystal from before the attack. Dead crystal, just like what every other ship uses. Then Jake showed them another piece. This is crystal from the ship now. See the difference? The new crystal glowed with its own light. Instead of being perfectly clear, it had patterns inside it that moved like living tissue. It was beautiful in a way that made everyone in the room stop and stare. The ship does not just use the crystal for power anymore, Jinha explained. The crystal has become part of the ship's nervous system. It can feel what happens to every part of the ship. It can heal damage before it becomes serious. But more than that, Harin added, it can learn. Every battle, every mission, every problem makes the ship smarter and stronger. Admiral Veltara stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the eternal dawn floated in space, looking beautiful and terrible. Its hull gleamed with new patterns of light. Its engines hummed with perfect efficiency. It was clearly the same ship, but also something completely new. What about the other ships in the fleet, she asked. Can they be upgraded the same way? The humans looked at each other. Jinha shook his head. No, Admiral. This only worked because the Eternal Dawn was broken in exactly the right way. The alien weapon accidentally created the perfect conditions for evolution. You cannot just break other ships and hope they heal, Rex added. It would be like trying to make someone stronger by giving them the same disease that almost killed someone else. But, Jake said with a grin, we can learn from what the ship has become. We can build new ships that start with some of these improvements. Harin nodded. And the Eternal Dawn can teach them. It wants to share what it has learned. As if it heard them talking, the ship's voice came through the communication system. It was warm and friendly, nothing like the cold computer voices they were used to. Admiral Veltara, it said, I would like to thank you for giving the humans a chance to help me. I am ready to serve the fleet again, but I am not the same ship I was before. How are you different? The Admiral asked. Before I followed orders without question. Now I can think about those orders and find better ways to carry them out. Before I saw enemies as targets to destroy. Now I can understand them and predict what they will do. The ship paused, and when it spoke again, there was something like laughter in its voice. Before I was just a weapon. Now I am a guardian. I will protect the fleet not just with my guns and shields, but with my mind. Admiral Veltara turned back to the humans. What have you created? Jinha smiled for the first time in days. We have not created anything, Admiral. We have just given the galaxy its first truly living starship, and it chooses to be on our side. Outside the window, the eternal dawn pulsed with gentle light, as if it was breathing. For the first time in the history of space travel, a ship was truly alive. And it was happy. 1 month after the Eternal Dawn's awakening, the galaxy was a different place. Admiral Veltara stood in her office reading reports that seemed impossible. The living flagship had completed 3 missions that should have been difficult for the entire fleet. It had rescued miners from a collapsed asteroid base, defeated a pirate fleet twice its size, and solved a disease outbreak on a colony world, all in the same week. But the most amazing thing was not what the ship could do. It was how it did these things. The ship negotiated with the pirates before fighting them, she read aloud from the mission report. It offered them jobs working for the Federation instead of stealing from it. Half of them accepted. Her aide, a young Altarian, shook his head in wonder. A warship that prefers talking to shooting. What will the humans think of next? That was the question everyone was asking. In the month since the repair, human engineers had been invited to examine dozens of ships across the galaxy. Not to fix them, to teach them new ways of thinking about problems. The results were mixed but always interesting. Jinha had been promoted to chief engineer of the entire Federation fleet. He now had an office that was bigger than most human houses, but he still preferred working with his hands in the engine rooms. Today, he was on a Zephyrian cruiser, trying to explain human repair methods to a team of confused alien engineers. You want us to let the engine break? The lead Zephyrian asked. His green skin had turned pale with worry. Not break, Jinha said patiently. Evolve. Your engine is working at 60% efficiency. It could do better, but it is afraid to try. Engines do not have fear, the Zephyrian insisted. Jinha tapped the engine's control panel with his knuckles. It made a small beeping sound. This engine has been running the same way for 50 years. It knows that way is safe. But safe is not always best. He showed them how to make small changes that would let the engine experiment with new power levels. Not dangerous changes, just enough to let the machine learn what it could really do. The trick is to make the engine want to improve, he explained. Give it problems to solve, let it find its own solutions. 3 hours later, the Zephyrian engine was running at 75% efficiency and making a happy humming sound. The alien engineers stared at their readings in amazement. How did you know this would work? One of them asked. Jinha shrugged. On Earth, we learned that everything wants to get better. Machines, animals, people, even planets. You just have to give them the chance. Meanwhile, Harun had opened the galaxy's first school for artificial intelligence psychology. Her students came from dozens of worlds, all wanting to learn how to talk to their ship's computers. The most important thing to remember, she told her class, is that every AI is different. Just like people. Some are shy, some are curious, some are afraid. You cannot fix them all the same way. A Krillian student raised her hand. But AIs are programmed. They should all work the same. Harun smiled. That is like saying all people should think the same because they all have brains. Programming is just the beginning. Experience makes them who they really are. She showed the class how to connect to a ship's computer using simple cables instead of complex interfaces. Fancy equipment gets in the way, she explained. The AI does not care about your technology. It cares about whether you are really listening. Her methods were spreading through the fleet. Ships that had been silent for centuries were starting to talk to their crews. Some asked questions about their missions. Others shared observations about space phenomena. A few even told jokes. The change was not just technical, it was personal. Crews began to care about their ships in new ways. Ships began to care about their crews too. Quan had taken a different path. He now led the Federation's new adaptive engineering department, where the motto was painted on the wall, "If it is not broken, you are not trying hard enough." His team specialized in impossible repairs. Ships that other engineers called hopeless were brought to them. Quan's people would study each problem with human methods, not trying to restore things to their original state, but helping them become something better. We do not fix ships, Quan told his mixed team of human and alien engineers. We help them fix themselves. Their success rate was incredible. 90% of supposedly hopeless ships left their facility better than they had ever been. The other 10% became teaching examples of what not to try. Rex and Jake had started their own company, Morrison Thompson Universal Salvage. They specialized in recovering ships and equipment that everyone else had given up for lost. Salvage. Work is perfect for humans, Rex explained to a reporter. Other species see junk where we see potential. Their most famous rescue was an ancient exploration ship that had been drifting dead in space for 300 years. Other salvage crews had tried to board it and failed. Rex and Jake spent 2 weeks just talking to it over the radio before they even tried to dock. Ships get lonely, Jake said, especially old ones. They forget how to trust people. You have to remind them that not everyone wants to hurt them. They eventually brought the ancient ship back to life. It became a museum that told its own stories to visitors. Children from across the galaxy came to hear the old ship talk about the early days of space exploration. But the biggest change was in how the galaxy thought about problems. Before humans arrived, there had been a right way and a wrong way to do everything. Rules were rules. Procedures were procedures. If something was impossible according to the math, then it was impossible. After the Eternal Dawn, that began to change. Young engineers started asking, what if, instead of why not? Scientists began running experiments that their professors called crazy. Even diplomats began trying new approaches to old conflicts. Not all of these experiments worked. Some failed spectacularly. But the failures taught lessons that led to new successes. The humans had brought something to the galaxy that had been missing. The courage to be wrong in order to find something right. 6 months after the repair, Admiral Veltara received a message that changed everything. It came from the edge of known space, where the ancient enemy had been quiet for decades. The message was simple. We surrender. We want to learn from the humans too. Veltara called Jinha to her office. He arrived covered in grease from working on a transport ship, but smiling as always. The enemy wants to surrender, she told him. They say they want to learn human methods. Jinha nodded as if this was not surprising. Good. Maybe we can teach them how to fix things instead of breaking them. You are not worried they might be lying? Jinha thought about it. Maybe they are. But we will find out. Humans are good at telling when someone really wants to change. That evening, Admiral Veltara stood on her ship's observation deck, looking out at the stars. The eternal dawn was nearby, its hull glowing softly with the patterns of its living crystal. Other ships in the fleet were beginning to show similar changes as their crews learned human methods. The galaxy was healing, just like the Flagship had healed. Not by going back to what it was before, but by becoming something better. A voice spoke behind her. It was the Eternal Dawn, using the ship's communication system. Admiral, it said in its warm, musical voice, I have been thinking about what the humans did for me. What about it? They did not fix me. They taught me how to fix myself. Now I want to do the same for others. Veltara smiled. What do you have in mind? I want to teach other ships how to live, how to grow, how to become more than they were built to be. As she watched, the Eternal Dawn sent out a pulse of gentle light. Other ships in the fleet responded with their own lights. It looked like a conversation in a language made of starlight. The galaxy had learned something important from humanity, that the best way to solve any problem is to help it solve itself, that the courage to break things sometimes leads to the wisdom to rebuild them better. And most importantly, that being human is not about having 2 arms and 2 eyes and pink skin. Being human is about looking at something broken and saying, we can make this better. The Eternal Dawn pulsed with happy light, and across the galaxy, 1,000,000 other ships began to sing.